Hello, everyone. I'm Yinhua Tao. Now I'm a research associate at the University of Cambridge. And my research is interested in the longitudinal analysis of health-related behavior. And today I'm going to share our recent research progress with you. It's about socioeconomic inequality in diet. And in this study, we are interested in a specific stage of life, that is early adulthood. And I have summarized our key research findings in the title of this slide. Early adulthood socioeconomic trajectories contributes to inequalities in adult diet quality, independent of childhood and adulthood socioeconomic position, or SEP in short. First, I want to show you some figures, some key facts about socioeconomic inequalities in diet. I got these numbers from the Food Foundation organization. It shows that socioeconomic inequality in diet are quite well established in the UK, and we can see that those poor households, those deprived neighborhoods tend to be exposed to an unhealthy food environment, and their diet quality is worse than the socioeconomic advantaged groups. However, less clear is how these socioeconomic inequalities in diet develop from a life course perspective. And based on the previous evidence, we have shown a link from adulthood socioeconomic position to adult diet quality. It's termed the model of immediate risk. However, some longitudinal studies show that this dietary inequality could establish quite early in life. So they introduce parental socioeconomic position like their parental education or family income during childhood to explain the dietary inequality in adulthood. And there are two main findings. The first one is based on the social trajectory model. The basic idea is that the parental SEP during childhood might track over the life course. So it's closely related to the adulthood SEP, which have shown association with the diet outcome. The second main finding is based on the cumulative risk model. It shows that childhood SEP contribute to the adult diet quality independent of the adulthood SEP. That's to say, the parental SEP may have a cumulative risk on the diet outcome in later life. In this study, we are interested in another important but largely overlooked period of life, that is early adulthood from age 16 to 24 years. We find this life stage very interesting because of the following two characteristics. The first one is there is a series of education or employment-related transition taking place in this life stage, which means the SEP may be quite unstable in this time period. And the second point is that the SEP established in early adulthood may track into the later life and influence our diet outcome. That's to say, early adulthood SEP may be a precondition for adulthood SEP. So based on these two characteristics, we designed two research questions to be investigated in this study. The first one is, do socioeconomic trajectories across early adulthood contribute to the diet quality in mid-adulthood independent of childhood SEP? Here you can see that we use a trajectory-based measure of SEP in early adulthood because, as I mentioned before, the socioeconomic position may be quite unstable in this time period, so we may need a trajectory-based measure. The second research question is the extent to which adulthood SEP mediates the association between early adulthood SEP and adult diet quality. To answer these two questions, we use the data from BCS 70. We include the participants who have data on educational and economic activities in early adulthood. That's from age 16 to 24 years. This comes to more than 12,000 participants included in this study. And the measure of the outcome is the overall diet quality. We use the pyramid-based Mediterranean diet score to measure overall diet quality at age 46 years, that's in mid-adulthood. I'll introduce this measure later. Our exposure is a trajectory-based measure of SEP in early adulthood, which has been published in our 2021 study. It has come to 6 classes of early adulthood SEP from age 16 to 24 years, and I'll introduce this measure in detail as well in the following slides. The first is about the measure of Mediterranean diet. In this measure, there are 15 food components included. For each food component, a continuous score from 0 to 1 is assigned based on the daily consumption. And after we sum all the scores from these 15 food components, we get a continuous score ranging from 0 to 15, with a higher score representing better diet quality based on recommendation of Mediterranean diet. For a measure of socioeconomic trajectories in early adulthood, we use educational and economic activity data from age 16 to 24 years. After using the longitudinal latent class analysis, we come to the 6 classes included in this study. The first one is a continuing education class, and the next 4 are based on the occupational social class. They are managerial class, skilled non-manual class, skilled manual class, and partly skilled class. And the last one is the economically inactive class. And for participants from this class, they are inactive in the labor market for most of the time in early adulthood. To make you more clear with this measure, I'll use the first class as example to show how we use the latent class analysis. We have the data about educational and economic activities from age 16 to 24 years for each participant. And then we cluster these participants based on the year-specific activity data to get the first class, the largest one, the continuing education class. And in this class, participants mostly continue further education from age 16 to around 21 years. After that, they entered the job market and in the occupation of the in the occupation of the professional employment, managerial employment, or skilled non-manual employment. That's a measure of our research exposure. In this study, we included the confounders of sex, parental, and neighborhood SEP in childhood, adolescent diet quality, similarly measured by the Mediterranean diet, and adolescents' health-related behavior and health status. And we included 2 potential mediators of the relationship between early adulthood SEP and adult diet quality. Their household income measured at the household level, and neighborhood deprivation measured at the neighborhood level. For the statistical analysis, because we included the participants who have data on the exposure measure, so we use multiple imputation for the missing outcome and covariate data. In the modeling analysis, we first use the OLS regression model to test the overall association between early adulthood SET and adult diet quality. And then we use the causal mediation analysis to test the mediation of the association via household income and neighborhood deprivation. And here comes our results. First is the participants' socioeconomic characteristics at different life stages. And we can see a quite clear difference between the continuing education class and other 5 SET classes. You can see those participants from the continuing education class are more likely to have parents in higher occupational social class and also in higher educational level during their childhood. Besides, for this continuing education class, those participants are more likely to have higher household income and live in a less deprived neighborhood at age 46 years, indicating a tracking of SEP from childhood to adulthood. Then we test the association between early adulthood SET and adult diet quality. Here again, we show a clear difference in diet quality between the continuing education class and the remaining classes. For the continuing education class, those participants tend to have a higher model mean value of Mediterranean diet scores at mid-adulthood. However, for the other 5 classes, we do not see clear differences in their predicted diet quality, even though there's a slight downward gradient in diet quality based on the occupational social class. And the difference in diet quality is also shown based on our descriptive results. You can see that the continuing education class is associated with a higher mean value of Mediterranean diet score. And their better diet quality is also shown in most food components included in the Mediterranean diet, except for legumes, white meats, and eggs. Finally, we test the mediation of the SET diet association by 2 potential mediators. And here I want to mention that because of the little difference in diet quality among the occupational defined classes and the economically inactive class, we combine these 5 classes as a reference group in the causal mediation analysis. So here we focused more on the continuing education class versus other SET class. And first, for the results of household income, and we can see it's largely not a valid mediator. You can see the proportion mediator is quite minimal. Compared to the direct association between continuing education class and better diet quality, the indirect effect via household income is quite small. However, there is a slight mediation via neighborhood deprivation. For participants from the continuing education class, they tend to live in a less deprived neighborhood in mid-adulthood. Furthermore, a lower level of neighborhood deprivation is associated with better diet quality, but this association is weak in the effect size. So the message can be taken away from this study is quite clear. The continuing education class was associated with better diet quality measured by the Mediterranean diet at age 46 years. And this SET diet association was largely not mediated by household income and neighborhood deprivation at age 46 years, and it was independent of the childhood SEP. So based on these findings, we try to better understand socioeconomic inequalities in diet from a life cost perspective. And this diagram shows what we have known based on previous study. You can see that childhood SEP contribute to the adult diet quality independent of adulthood SEP. In this study, we introduced the life stage of early adulthood. We can see that after we take into account early adulthood SET, adulthood SEP is no longer related to the adult diet quality. So in general, that shows us early adulthood represents a critical period of life for intervention to prevent the development of socioeconomic inequality in diet in later life. Because this study found little mediation by household income and neighborhood deprivation, we suggest future research to identify other potential pathways from a life cost perspective, including cumulative exposures to food environment and tracking of dietary patterns with age. And the last slide is about the strengths and limitations of this study. The major strength of the study is that we use a life course approach. And based on this approach, we used a trajectory-based measure of early adulthood SEP and used causal mediation analysis to test the socioeconomic pathway of dietary inequality in mid-adulthood. And this study is also limited by a single birth cohort and self-reported diet data and other unexamined potential pathways underlying the contribution of early adulthood SETs to adult diet quality. Thanks, that's all I want to share our research about socioeconomic inequalities in diet from a life course perspective, and we are welcome for any questions or comments. Okay, thank you.